what would be kind of your just a quick down and dirty tip for exploring the possibility of a small group? How do you get started? I mean, again, kind of that idea of you don't want to sign up for 20 years and say that this is it. These are going to be your people. But at the same time, you recognize that the reality is you're going to be with some tough conversations, tough personalities, whatever. Where can people go after this? What are some good ideas for people getting started? All right, friends, welcome to this week's episode of The Boundless Show. This is Lisa Anderson here with you. Okay, here we are for our roundtable. We've got a great crew here, including our friend Georgia. Hey, Georgia.
Hey, glad to be back.
Good to have you. That's fabulous. Okay, we have Dani here, Dani Cruz. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and our friend Vince Hoppe. He's been here, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been.
I had to talk to him about his hair. I mean, that was super weird because, I mean, I felt like he was buzzed last time I saw him. Oh, you weren't buzzed, like not in that way, buzz cut. Oh, that was weird. Yeah, you weren't that way.
Well, yeah, definitely not that.
We'll say that anyway. Okay, for now. But anyway, it's so great. We are going to have a conversation around church small groups. So I don't know if, I feel like this is the topic of a number of church sketches or online. It's always the small group. I feel like, especially with young adults, Georgia, you do a lot with Reels and TikTok. I feel like small groups come up and just many of the things that can go awry through involvements with small groups.
Trauma dumping. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we have a lot of listeners who are like, why should I even do small groups? Or I have done small groups and they are the lamest ever. Or I, got outed in some weird thing that I shared or other people overshared, or there just seems to always be some opportunity for them to be rife with weirdness or difficulty or whatever, conflict, who knows. So let's first just kick it off by, let's talk about, because I know, Vince, you're a pastor, so clearly you have to be pro small group. He has to toe the line here on we believe in community at my church. And Dani, I know you do a ton. You're even with Young Life, and so clearly there's a lot there. Georgia, I know you've been in small groups. I have as well. You've led small groups. So let's talk first of all about just an overview. What have you been part of? What have you felt was especially successful? What maybe didn't get off the ground? Just what has your whole small group vibe been in general? Georgia, why don't you kick us off?
My whole small group vibe in general. Okay, perfect. Amazing. I think in high school, they look very different than how they look now. And thank God, because in high school, I feel like it can often feel like the leader is just asking questions and everybody's sitting there silently, and then there's always that one girl who loves to yap and she won't shut up, and that wasn't me, obviously. But I think the older that you get, it just gets sweeter and sweeter. I don't think it's always like that, and I'm not going to sit here and say every small group is perfect, but I think I've had the opportunity to be a part of some small groups that have just been really genuine, really life-giving, and more importantly, God-honoring, just in the fact that we're opening the word, which is the most important part of a small group. If you're not opening a word, that's just a yap fest, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think my experience is that, started out in a place where it's just a lot of young kids not knowing what they're doing, to now where it's a little more structured. We're talking about the word, we're getting deep with each other, and we're walking with each other as we're walking with Christ.
Okay. Dani?
I have been in and facilitated quite a variety of small groups, whether that is through Young Life and doing things with high school students and walking with them, or being involved in a formal church group kind of setting. But then also just some small groups that were created through friends or through existing community. And I think there's pros and cons of all of them, as are with most things in life. But where I have seen some really great highlights are, one, when we used to do a Young Life small group, we call it campaigners. What we would do is have all of the students that showed up that day all read the chapter of scripture that we were going over. And so it just got them on the same page right away instead of, hey, here's your homework, hope you do it next time. Oh, half you didn't. Okay, we have to catch you up anyway. It was just like a really practical way that we saw success for rich conversation, kind of like you were saying, Georgia, and being able to go deeper in that. And then something I've also noticed really more recently, more within the church context that's popping up, is short-term small groups or Bible studies. And I think there's a lot of benefit to that. There's potentially lower risk. There is a shorter timeline, so it's less overwhelming for people. And I got to facilitate one of those with our church like about a year and a half ago. And even though we knew that we were gathering temporarily, all of the women in the group still shared very honestly and vulnerably. And so I don't think the temporary nature of it cut off vulnerability or depth, which was fantastic. But it was manageable for people, and they could commit to 8 or 10 weeks, whatever the timeline was. And so those are some of the things that kind of stand out as more helpful pieces.
Yeah, that's great.
I think in my experience, the things that make for a good small group isn't just isolated to Christian groups. And so probably the first small group that I was ever really a part of was my men's softball league team in high school. And what it is we had an affinity. We're all in the same age group. We all played sports together. And then we also had a kind of a shared mission, which was not get arrested. And so this is how we ended up together. And so we hung out together. We did a lot of other things together. But I think that then led to some of the important things with the rest of our lives. Now, kind of moving that into church small groups, I think the things that I've been all kinds of like geographic based, affinity based, but things that really make it work well. And also we do at our church, we do also like these, we call them cohort groups, and they're like 6 to 8 weeks. Yep. And that's what we do. But I think the thing that people will talk about, like the small group is effective, is if people can genuinely, authentically share their lives with other people, be prayed for. And so what they share, I think, in common are two important things: a sense of mission together, but then also in like an affinity that they've gone through life, or they've gone through the stuff together. And so it could be a generational cohort going in together, and so forth. And so it has to have some elements of those. And so sometimes the affinity is like geographically based. We live in the same area, same zip code or something like that. And then those two things kind of foster the authenticity and time together. And ultimately, I think one of the most important things to a small group has been, that I've seen, is kind of is just the consistency, meeting in the same place, same time. These are just practical things that have worked. But I think that those are just like little nuggets that have helped out.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we're in a culture, especially younger generations, say, younger millennials and now Gen Z, who feel generally, as we see studies show, disconnected in a number of ways, at least from real relationships. And, again, DMing someone doesn't count or whatever. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of what a small group can offer. And in that, maybe someone share like what I feel like we toss around terms a lot. So what is different from a small group, or the same? I don't know. There may be some sameness to it as well, from like a community group or a Bible study, or what should you expect from a small group? What would be helpful, in knowing that going into it?
All these terms, usually like community group, or we call our city groups, or whatever. Hopefully they are fitting in a number of things that are kind of similar or the same. Time in the Word together. It's not a replacement for worship, but it's a time in order to kind of give some unity, some structure. But then it's also a time, the small group is a time for prayer amongst each other, and then also just a social time for connection, just getting to know each other. And so kind of shared experiences, whether you go and serve at a local ministry or social services together, or you do something like you go to a baseball game or hike the incline together, do something crazy, and And if you're almost getting arrested, at least when I was in high school, then it was making for a good time.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's why sometimes people get so intimidated when they want to join a group of any sort, is because we've given so many terms that it kind of feels like, what's all this Christianese jargon that we're using? But I think ultimately a small group is just a community of people. It doesn't really matter what name you put to it, because I feel like every church has its own like terminology, like, and that's okay. That's just how it is. But I think ultimately it's like getting together, getting to know each other, and getting to know God. How you do that, I don't think has to be any certain way. And I think if it feels like it has to be any certain way, then maybe take a step back and ask yourself, why does it have to be this, then this, then this? It's like, okay, well, this group could meet out at a park and they could start with worship and then they could pray and then they could open God's word. It doesn't have to be any sort of way. I think ultimately it's just, are you fostering or creating a place where you can foster good community, where you're getting to know each other and getting to know Christ. And I think that's been something that's been really helpful to me, living far away from my immediate family. Having a small group is like having a different kind of family here nearby, because yes, I have my church community, which is at large, at least like 300 people. But when you have your 25 people, 12 to 25 people that are in your small group, that's like your little family. And I think, together we get to live life in a way that would be like if I had my family nearby, but I don't. And so, I don't know, it looks different for every person. But I think the goal should be the same.
Yeah.
I love both of your guys' points, Georgia, just getting to know each other and then getting to know Christ in that space. And then what you had mentioned earlier, Vince, about shared mission. I think what's so critical is to name it together. What are we stepping into? What do we want from this group? Because everybody could have their own idealistic version of what that looks like. There could be different expectations about how often are we meeting? What does this Bible study look like? What are we even capable of doing together in this season of life? If it's a group of people that all are single, if it's a group of people that all have young kids, if it's intergenerational, just addressing that together before you dive in. Because I think what can happen is we go in with these different names and titles of small group, discipleship group, whatever it is, and then people are disappointed or frustrated because they went in with a specific expectation that's not being met, and maybe they don't even realize that, or they don't know how to voice it. And so I think as we enter into these groups, whether you are coming into something existing or we're starting it all together, just having that conversation off the bat can be really helpful, so that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. Isn't that the helpful thing about, like, especially here in Colorado Springs, we're like, hey, 6 to 8 weeks we're going to meet, because then you know exactly what to expect.
Totally.
And then like for a small group that continuously meets, it's that life together aspect, spurring one another on to love and good deeds.
Yeah.
That's kind of just how to live the Christian life through, whether we're single, married, raising teenagers, or, struggling to get out of bed in the morning. So
I think that speaks a little bit to both the intimidation factor and what we're talking about, the different types of small groups, because my question is, I feel like many situations I've been in, maybe it's been a church context, where it's literally like, sign up for a small group. And you just sign a sheet and they kind of assign you somewhere. And then you're like, if it's not a 6 to 8 weeker, you're like, here goes my next 20 years. And I'm with these people that I can't stand. And I might have to switch churches. And it gets really weird really fast. So but that tension of, because I totally understand what you're saying, Vince, about, man, how great is it when you just have, maybe there's something topical that you're going to do, or it's going to be an affinity, and it's going to be short term, it's going to be a summer group, or it's going to be, and then you feel like, okay, I can do that. And if it just crashes and burns, no biggie, I'll be out by August. But what about the purpose of a small group when people are like, I really need to be seen, or I need to be held accountable, or I need to go deep, or I need to really, I don't have friends, or I don't have people who care about me. How do you have those kind of expectations especially when there are a lot of small groups. Like, have you guys been in the ones where you find out, like, oh, we're closed, like we're a small group? Like,
There's not
is that
enough
even
room.
biblical?
There's
Yeah.
not enough room in the
There's
inn for you.
Right. And they're
Sorry.
like 8 people, and they're like, no, we can't take
Yeah.
9. And that, I think, can breed a lot of hurt when it
Yeah.
comes to, I can't even find people to hang out with because now this
Yeah.
is cliquish, or it's
Yeah.
gotten really dysfunctional, or
Yeah.
we've met for 10 years and it's, I don't know. I mean, how do you deal with all the challenges
I feel
around
like this might be controversial, but I think it's okay to like kind of date your small group, as it were. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but at least at my church, they have all of the small groups based off of geography, like within Colorado Springs. So we have people who live in Monument all the way up to, you know, kind of the, I don't know where other, but far away. Okay. So, but you can go geographically. You can choose to go to the Bible study that's closest to you, or you can kind of test out which one works best for you, both like personality wise or just like what you need. And that's what I did. Kind of like went to a couple different ones, and there were some of them where they were like, we don't have room, not in the sense that like we don't want a 9th person, but literally our house cannot contain another person. And to me, I was just like, okay, that's okay. And I went to a couple different Bible studies, and then I found a group that I really clicked with, and I've been with them for 2.5 years now. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like going, and it doesn't mean that it's like, oh, I don't like those people that are in my church. I think it's just okay to be like, okay, well, this is where I fit right now, or this is like where I feel that the Lord has asked me to be right now. And I think that's okay. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a pastor, so maybe I'm wrong. But I do think too, like we recently had a couple that left our Bible study group because they felt called to create another one. Because our Bible study group started to get really big because everybody had a baby, which slay, we love that. But it started to get really big, and they were like, you know what, we feel called to open up another group so that because our church has started to grow, and that was awesome. And it wasn't like anyone's feelings were hurt. We were like, oh, well, praise God, there's going to be another group, and we loved that couple. We loved being a part of their small group, but they decided to have another one and host it at their house. And so I don't know, I feel like sometimes you just don't have to get butthurt about things. Like it's okay. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
In my mind, this is breaking down into kind of the entry point into small groups and then real life long term. So I had the privilege of joining a women's small group this past fall, and their way of bringing you in, but not with this crazy expectation of, you know, you're signing 20 years of your life away, was, hey, we would just ask that you commit for this first semester. And if you change your mind or it's just not working out for you, like, please feel free to go. And with all love and respect in that sense. And so I ended up staying. I really loved it, but I just appreciated that at the entry point, there was this very clear communication of this is an ongoing group. However, this is just a small commitment we're asking you to make while you're trying it out, while you're dating the small group, right? But then I think the reality going long-term, entering into these groups that might be multiple years or even decades for some people, is we have to be realistic about being in a relationship with human beings. We idealize, oh, this will be so rich and they'll be my best friends and they'll show up to all these events in my life and I'll do the same and it'll just be so great. And we're complex, and we bring in our junk, and we bring in the weird things that we grew up with that they didn't. And we get the option to honestly wrestle through that with people or not. And so, and I'm speaking out of very personal experience of just trying to navigate that myself and what that looks like. And yeah, the reality is it's messy, but it's worthwhile. And I think if we settle into that, we will experience more of the community and the depth and the relational possibilities that Jesus even set out for the church and for community.
And I think you make a good point, because it's like, say you join a small group and it has 8 to 10 people. even if you end up liking all those people, you cannot go to the same level with all 10 of those as you can do. So maybe you're just going to find one person in that group that becomes a really close friend. Or and that's where I think our expectations come into play, because we're just like, this is going to be, these are going to be my people. And we're going to, I was in a small group where another friend and I decided, and this was like a pretty close group. These were pretty close friends. We'd been together for a while. But we decided that we wanted to go into this whole feedback thing of like, let's all start just intentionally sharing some feedback towards growth, and maybe just things that we could change and, grow in and mature in. And everyone else besides my friend and I were like, that's a hard pass for me. I'm not into it. And so then we're all mad. And we're like, don't you even care about maturity? Like, don't you care about... So anyway, I think you can float things and they don't go well. And maybe you need to find maybe another person that is into that or whatever. But yeah, you definitely meet people where they are, I think. And you have to go from there.
There's a couple things maybe I would want to add is one, I think this is a little bit of a pushback, and so sorry, Georgia. It's just I think at times it is difficult for us to imagine a world where we get to pick everything the way that we want. And I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I think though, like in our world, right, we're going to be part of groups or part of we're going to have to associate with people or work with people that we wouldn't normally otherwise do. And I think sometimes it's the exercise of our understanding of the gospel and the truth of that like, and that you get to practice in small groups that maybe at times, depending, and all things being equal, that you're part of a group with people that you don't necessarily like or that you get along with, in which I think God is exercising or working the gospel deeper into you, so that you, in your securities, are able to sit there and water the grass that you're, on your side of the fence, instead of always looking for something else. And so this is at times, like, some of the longevity, taking time and, like, being in a place and being constant is really important. And then another thing, though, I will also say this is Dietrich Bonhoeffer has this great quote. It's like, if you're looking for the perfect community, don't join it. Why? Because you'll ruin it, right? And that's more to your point is like, in any small group, you're always going to run into people who have been corrupted with sin, and it's going to be hard. People are going to hurt you, and in any small group, at times you're going to be hurt. But hopefully there is a commitment to the gospel that allows you to forgive one another, experience reconciliation, and that's, if that's being exercised, then I think you have the opportunity to see a lot of growth, not just in yourself, but also in the group at large.
Yeah. So kind of as we finish here, everyone just give their tip, because there are people who are listening, maybe who've been in small groups for a while, or maybe it's a Bible study or another type of group. But there are many who either because of church hurt situations or just geography moves because of their job, they've just not really gone in there. And they're like, I haven't been in one in 4 years, and I don't know if I can get back into it, or I don't know if I really want to commit. What would be kind of just a quick down and dirty tip for exploring the possibility of a small group? How do you get started? How do you, I mean, again, kind of that idea of you don't want to sign up for 20 years and say that this is it, these are going to be your people. But at the same time, you recognize that the reality is you're going to be with some tough conversations, tough personalities, whatever. Where can people go after this? What are some good ideas for people getting started?
I think you just have to commit. Yeah. Like at some point,
so you're saying like go to your church. If your church has small groups, figure out where one is.
And to your point, again, I'm not saying that you get to pick like your perfect thing. Like, and I'm not saying that my group is perfect, because they're not. I just am more so saying that it's like, if you're gonna take the time to go and like figure out what you're gonna do, like, people can small group hop all they want, but if you never commit, then you never commit. And it's like, I wouldn't say take a year to go to every small group in every church that you've ever been to, or don't sign up to go to one different small group every single night and then never really get deep with anybody. At some point, just commit to one of them. And if that one is like, if you think it's perfect, okay. If it's not perfect, okay. But it's just like, if you're not committing to anything, then you're not committing to deeper growth in terms of community.
I was going to say to Vince, the people you can't get away from, that's called your family of origin. And that's why I want to find people in a small group that I can be like, you're pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to hang out with you because
that's
no,
not
I'm
to
just
say that
teasing.
you shouldn't be a
I'm
part
only
of a
partially
group. Like,
teasing.
yeah, I don't think there's like, I don't know. I also am like, okay, fine, let's talk about it. But I'm just saying, it's like, I've also heard people who have been in groups where it's like, there hasn't been reconciliation. And I think more so than anything, I'm just like, yeah, if somebody has a spirit of like hurt towards you, then why would you continue to be in a place where if you're trying to find that, then it's like, I think it's also healthy to be like, you know what, like, this is actually not the best place for me to be. And that's okay, is what it would be. My only thought is that it's like, yes, be in a group where you're being pushed and you're growing and you're getting to know the gospel more, but also like, if someone is being outwardly hurtful towards you and there's no reconciliation in sight, then it's okay to find like, you know, find a space to be like, you know what, I might need to step back from this small group and find a different place to commit my time.
Okay. All right. Other ideas for just trying something, plugging in somewhere. Where can they go?
Yeah, I would just establish the fact first and foremost that it's worth it. John Mark Comer, in a conversation around community, talks about how the cost of not seeking it out and ultimately existing in isolation is far worse, far higher than the cost of engaging the small group, going through the initiation phase, like figuring out how to stick around. So know that it's worth it. I would say for the folks who are brand new in a community, if there is a church you are plugged into, find a group there, first and foremost. And maybe it's a situation where you are rooted in a community. You've been going to a church for a while, but you're in a shifting phase maybe. Also consider the idea of looking around at the other Jesus followers in your life and going, what if we started small and 6 of us got together around the table once a week? Having intentional conversation, sharing a meal, whatever that looks like. But I think we can start simple and small.
Great.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just got to dip your toe in, right? And you just got to start somewhere, and so you got to. But it's risky, right? So there's a couple quotes I love. It's like, to love is to be vulnerable. C.S. Lewis says this, right? And then, so if you're going to be known, if you're going to actually experience love, and you're going to be able to love others the way Christ has loved us, then you're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to make yourself vulnerable, which leads me to Branson from Downton Abbey, speaking to Lady Mary, and he says something I thought was brilliant. And he says, well, isn't that what love is? Giving someone the permission to hurt you. And I think that in a lot of ways, the Christian life is, because you have great resources of being healed by the gospel, you're able to make yourself vulnerable, because the great God of the universe, in the person of Jesus Christ, made himself killable, ultimately vulnerable for us, so that we can be reconciled to God. And I think you know, it's hard, but you got to lean on the resources of the gospel to put yourself out there, make yourself vulnerable, in order that you can also then experience the ability to care and love and show Christ's love to others as well.
It's also, as Toby Mack and friends say, love is a verb.
So true.
I just thought I would throw that in there. That's good. So true.
So true.
So
We
true.
love Toby for
You guys,
that.
thanks so much for this conversation. That's really awesome. I mean, I think these are great thoughts around why do small group, but then also how to make it possible, and to realize that, yeah, we might have expectations, but you got to go in there and just do the hard work and love other people and be willing to be loved. So thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.